Hi, my name is Stacey Rifkin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Commercial Strategy at H1, and I'm very excited to have Jennifer Wheeler from Johnson & Johnson here with me today. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with us. First question, tell me a little bit more about your background and how you've come to Johnson & Johnson and how your role has evolved.
Hi, thanks, Stacey. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm Jennifer Wheeler, and my current role at Johnson & Johnson is in immunology medical affairs. I'm the associate director of analytics. I am an engineer by schooling, and I spent the majority of my career in medical device in a number of different roles: research and development, quality, medical affairs. And I've been at Johnson & Johnson for a little over 5 years now. I started in clinical quality assurance and have spent the rest of my time in medical affairs in two different departments in oncology and immunology. And when I first started in this analytics role, we kind of heavily had relied on other departments to get data to support medical affairs. And when I started, I was one of the first analytics functions that was solely dedicated to medical affairs. So I think when I first started, we just got so many ad hoc requests because people were really excited about us having access to data that we could curate specifically for medical affairs strategy. And I think things have really moved beyond those ad hoc requests to really specifically being able to focus our medical strategy. So we typically support our field medical teams and our in-house medical teams. So, our field medical teams really being able to focus on medical education and scientific exchange. And then for our in-house medical teams, being able to answer key business questions and supporting things like advisory boards and clinical trial enrollment.
One of the things that we understand is that medical affairs has changed over the past couple of years, even couple of decades. Can you tell me a little bit more about how the expectations of medical affairs, how your role has evolved, and what are some of the changes you've seen over the past couple of years in medical affairs?
I think medical affairs has really come a long way. I think there used to be a pretty heavy focus on just engaging what is traditionally known as a key opinion leader. And I think we've really evolved with being able to access data to identify how patients are being treated and where we can determine where there are underserved patients or where patients might not be receiving standard of care. So, really uncovering those care gaps and being able to target our medical education to where those care gaps might exist. I think when we first started relying on our own medical affairs analytics roles to use data for our medical affairs teams, it was really kind of answering a bunch of ad hoc questions. And then we really focused it on how can we shape our medical affairs strategy. So we work with our in-house medical teams and our field medical teams to help drive our education to where there might be the most medical care gaps and making sure that we identify the right providers for advisory boards, things like that.
What about the expectations for medical affairs? How has some of that changed?
I think we've really moved from an expectation of the quantity of engagements versus the quality of engagements. I think in the past we had metrics for MSLs that kind of looked like, let's make sure we're talking to these four key opinion leaders maybe 4 times a year. But now we can really look at how providers are treating and deploy our field medical teams against our materials and tools that make the most sense to get the information where it needs to go, and not necessarily how many times we need to speak to somebody, but rather having a focus on the medical education.
Before using H1, what were some of the challenges that you faced, and how has using H1 helped you overcome some of those challenges?
I think we tended to rely on data that we could get from other departments that weren't necessarily directly supporting medical affairs, and we relied pretty heavily on the subjective information that our field medical teams were able to provide to us based on their territory knowledge. Now that we have more of a breadth of data where we can look at claims data and bibliometric data such as publications, claims, and trials, it's really enabled us to uncover people that we might not have known in our territories. So, we tend to think of the people that are the prolific treaters, and then maybe we find somebody based on their claims data that we didn't even have any idea that they were, a top treater in that territory or things like that.
Before you had access to a tool like H1, um, what was your information about the patient journey, and how has that kind of changed since you've started using H1?
Mhm. I think patient journey wasn't really something that we really discussed before we had data, but now that we have a comprehensive set of data, we're able to see, where the patient starts care from the time of diagnosis and how they may switch between physicians and which types of physicians are providing that care. Sometimes we see that the physician that diagnoses isn't necessarily the physician that treats. So now maybe we're able to refocus our education to maybe not the actual main specialist, but maybe the periphery care team, like the nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. Just being really able to understand all of the touch points in that patient's journey from the time of diagnosis throughout their treatment history. And even if they've moved, locations in the United States, we can kind of see where patients are being treated and who's treating them.
Can you tell me about a time where you've used H1 to uncover information like that and maybe kind of like walk me through like what you did to get there?
For example, if my organization wants to consider entering into a new space, I can use H1 to look up any diagnosis or any therapeutic area because it's a comprehensive set of all diagnosis and therapeutic areas. So we can assess the landscape of that therapeutic area to determine feasibility of maybe new territories, depending on how many physicians are treating in that space, things like that.
Have you ever used H1 for like developing new territories?
One of the things that we did to explore a new space was we wanted to see the overlap of the therapeutic areas that we're already involved in and were there new providers that were beyond those therapeutic areas. Maybe sometimes we expect like a solid tumor space for it to be the same providers who are treating across multiple tumor types. And you can use H1 to assess whether or not there are different providers in different spaces beyond those that you're already engaging with in your own traditional or in your own
Yeah,
therapeutic space.
that makes a lot of sense. I
Mhm.
think sometimes we think a provider who's treating a certain type of cancer, all providers like them look alike.
Mhm.
And, understanding whether or not there's diversity of patients that they're seeing.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about what successes you've had with H1?
Mhm.
How has your team utilized it in order to support some of your key objectives?
One of the things that we've done with H1 is really help beef up our advisory board selection. So I think, we tend to want to use key opinion leaders or people that we've used in past ad boards. But what H1 has helped us do is develop a comprehensive set of advisors based on key medical questions. So we can develop our plans for advisory boards for the whole year and what business questions we want answered for those. And then we can find the people that we think would best be able to answer those business questions for us based on all of the data that H1 is able to provide. So claims data, treatment pattern data, past publications, past trials, whether or not they're favorable to speaking with industry or not. So it's really helped us just move beyond kind of a subjective selection of advisors to a quantitative selection of advisors.
So would you say like the volume of advisors has changed or has the breadth of advisors changed? What are some of the
Hmm.
things that you've seen changed?
I think it's a little bit of both. So we've moved beyond just using maybe the same set of advisors over and over to being able to get a more broad set of opinions by going just beyond typical key opinion leaders and moving more into maybe a community type advisor or somebody that has a larger patient population in a specific race or ethnic group. I think that's really helped us bring breadth and depth to our ad board selections too.
I love that. That's like we talk about like diversity is not just diversity of who the people are, but also diversity of thought, right? So have you been able to bring like diversity of thought to your advisory boards?
One of the things that I've really noticed is just moving away from having kind of a homogenous panel of advisors to maybe, a mix of medical doctors, nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, academics, community providers. So just a really nice mix of people and a nice mix of providers who may be treating different subsets of that patient population or different race and ethnicity groups
What's the
within a patient population.
what's the feedback been?
It's something that we just started using, so I'm excited to see how it unfolds over the course of the year. We typically identify the ad boards that we want to complete at the beginning of the year and which medical questions we want to have answered. So as the year progresses, we're going to be gathering our insights from each one of these boards, and I'm excited to see, how it shapes out.
Tell me a little bit more about why you like the breadth and
Mhm.
depth of H1's information.
I think it's just the speed at which I can get all of the data in one place. I think before, if you wanted information about someone's publications, you'd have to go to clinicaltrials.gov and get kind of a kludgy export, and you'd have to go to numerous different systems and maybe not be able to get a complete picture. And then once you have all that information that you've gathered from maybe 5, 6, 7 different places, they're all in different formats. It makes it really hard to connect it all together. It took a lot of time to curate data, whereas H1, it's all curated for you. It's all in one place. You can match it all together by NPI number or by H1 ID. So it just makes it really easy and fast.
And then one of the things you mentioned was that your subscription to H1 covers a broad disease area.
Mhm.
How has that impacted your business?
It's really the only place where I can go and get information about any therapeutic area. It's not curated specifically to one disease or one drug. It's comprehensive. It's the entire medical landscape across the globe. So I'm not limited to anything, and how that's impacted our business is it's really been able to help us look beyond where we traditionally treat, and it's really helped us get information on new disease areas. It's really helped us take a more qualitative approach to our decision making and how we expand beyond the therapeutic areas that we're in right now.
Can you tell me more about how health equity is important to Johnson and Johnson and
Mhm.
how the information you've been able to use with H1 has supported you in your role as you focus on health equity?
Mhm. I think at J&J, health equity is really a part of everything we do, particularly in medical affairs. We want to make sure that all patients are getting the care that they need and making sure that our products are representative of all the patients out there that could possibly use them. I think H1 has a really comprehensive set of race and ethnicity data, not only for the patients, but for the providers.
Have you used H1 to help you identify underrepresented patients, either for care gaps or clinical trials?
I think one of the things that H1 has really helped us understand is based on a certain like region of the United States, what the race and ethnic makeup is of that region. And then you can also look at how patients in a particular racial or ethnic group are being treated in that area and understand if maybe there's a patient population that's underserved.
Has H1 helped you in terms of answering some of the questions you have in a clinical trial?
So we want to make sure that our drugs that we're putting out through clinical trials are going to reach a diverse patient population. So we want to make sure that we are structuring our trials so that we have that representation in our trials so that we understand how our drugs affect all people that may be receiving them. And H1 helps us do that by identifying where the race and ethnicity populations are for that therapeutic area in the United States.
So, Jennifer, final question kind of on the future of medical affairs. And what's your vision where the future of medical affairs is, and how can technologies like H1 support the
Mhm.
future of medical affairs?
I think with all the information out there and providers being able to get information at their fingertips, I think it's going to be really important for medical affairs to be able to quickly assimilate data and get it out to providers as quickly as possible. I think what H1 is going to be able to help with is maybe summarizing that data or using AI or machine learning to help collate and summarize data quickly into digestible points that we can distribute to providers where needed.
That's a really interesting idea and really something that I think is exciting for H1 and for your organization.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been really wonderful to have you and have this conversation and understand more about you and what J&J is doing and how H1 is supporting that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have coming in your pipeline and looking forward to the continued partnership with H1. Thank you.
Thank you.